This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our weekly board chair check-in and update meeting. My name is Wilmarie Newton, and I will be moderating this call. In order to avoid background noise, I ask that you please mute yourself if you're not speaking. However, you can unmute yourself if you would like to ask a question, or you can type it into the chat box. If you're calling in from your cell phone, please take a moment to physically mute your cell phone, as I'm unable to mute you from my computer unless I mute all participants. Just as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be archived on CABE's website under services. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bob Rader. I'm the Executive Director of CABE, and we have an interesting meeting today lined up for you. But before we begin talking to Glenn, who we very much appreciate for being on today, he's a good friend, and it's nice to hear from him again, especially while the question of fall sports is to some extent on everybody's mind. Before we do that, though, I wanted to give you a couple of updates, and Patrice is going to help me, and hopefully Sheila is too. Yesterday, we sent out some information, and I just want to make sure it didn't get lost in going to board members. One of the things had to do with the DPH SDE discussions that go on every Tuesday morning from 8 till at least 9. I asked yesterday at one of our partners meetings, because this conference will now be recorded. That doesn't sound too good.
We have some, it sounds like a cell phone caller is not muted.
Please mute everybody if you're not speaking. We can't go on with this. So anyway, there's DPH and SDE meetings every Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. And so I asked the commissioner if it's okay if, actually I asked Charlene if it was okay if board members listen in or ask questions on this call. She said absolutely. So if you're interested in the health aspects, certainly you might want to listen in on those meetings. Second thing is, there have been some webinars that SDE has done on ventilation and disinfectant and cleaning, and it doesn't sound like the most exciting webinars in the world, but we put a link on to those. Patrice, you said this morning that you thought they were, the one you listened to was very good.
I listened to both of them this morning, and yes, I think they did provide some very good information and dispelled some probably misperceptions about what's effective and what's not effective.
Absolutely. So those are available to you too. They were on the first page of what Lisa sent you last night. We appreciate it, Lisa, for putting that stuff together. Another thing that you should know about, which I'm not going to go into any detail, and I don't think Patrice or Sheila will at this point. There is some flexibility in teacher evaluation this year. That was also in what we sent you yesterday. SDE is going to look to reimagine evaluation. It sounds like a Disney cartoon they're going to do, reimagine, in the next year. So we'll keep you apprised of that. And the last thing I want to just say to you, is a little strange. We got an email from a board member yesterday asking where you could find the numbers that would apply to the metrics that SDE uses. I think that was addendum 4. It looks like this. Hope you can see. It's the one with the color charts where they could find the information. And I am waiting for SDE to get back to us, because they're not in what the governor sends out every day. And we will certainly make sure it's available to all of you as well. So with that, I am going to turn this over to Patrice, who has some updates, and if Sheila is on, I'd like to hear from her too.
Just briefly, the State Board of Education did meet earlier this week and acted on several items of interest to you. One being around the issue of the use of a complete distance learning model when the health metrics show that it would be appropriate to either be in person or a hybrid, part in person, part distance. And this had been referenced by the governor previously. What they did was adopt a resolution that provides that if a district makes the decision to go full virtual when the health metrics indicate that the other options would be safe, that there would be a review of that decision by a committee, including representatives from the school construction unit at OPM, the State Department of Education, and the State Department of Public Health. And the intent of that review is not to accept or reject the decision of the local district. That still would be a local decision, but it is to have a conversation about what the obstacles are to providing some in-person learning and attempt to use state expertise or resources to resolve some of those issues. The decision, however, it's clear, would still remain as a local decision, but the goal is to try and provide support to help districts be able to have some in-person opportunities. Sheila, are you on?
Yes, she is.
Okay. Sheila, if you want to talk about, mention the two certification flexibilities.
I'll probably have to unmute everyone to give her a chance to talk since she's on her cell phone.
Thanks.
And again, if you're on your cell phone, as soon as I unmute you, can you please mute yourself so we don't get too much feedback?
Wonderful. Thank you, Will-Marie. Hi, folks. Good morning. So yes, Tuesday, the State Board of Ed met in a special meeting to make some changes to certification due to the pandemic. These were changes that they had been talking about probably for the last well, now I'm forgetting how many months back, but a number of months. One of them is certification 201, one of them is 202. 201 is pre-K to 8. It changes the endorsement so that there can be some flexibility with what each teacher may indeed choose, may have the opportunity to teach. With teachers going out because they have pre-existing conditions, this does allow, or maybe they're going to be distance teaching, this allows teachers to have some flexibility. An English teacher could teach history, what have you. In that, the second one is endorsement 202, and that's for 7th through 12th grade. Both of these endorsements do exclude special ed and languages. And on top of that, there was another endorsement that changed, which is 204, which is the world language one. And that dealt with the content around pre-K to 12. These endorsement changes are valid for 1 year, and they would need to be joint agreements with the teacher and the district. And that is a synopsis.
And on the State Department of Education's website, the resolutions that were adopted by the board are there in their COVID resource section.
And districts would be dedicating some resources to helping teachers if they're changing positions in terms of support. I'm sure that would look different in every district based on what type of a change would be made for that teacher, if they chose to make that change.
Thanks, Sheila. I just want to remind everybody, I talked about addendum 4 to the Adapt, Advance, and Achieve plan of the state. You should know that they decided rather than going back and amending the original plan, they are doing addendums. So that's why we're already up to 4. And who knows, we may hear about more in the very, very near future. I don't know.
I think we're at 5.
Excuse me, they're already at 5? Uh-oh, I got to go back and do mine. Six?
No, I
right
think you
now.
know that, but yeah.
Even as we're sitting here, they're turning them out. But seriously, you should all be aware of what they say and what they're doing. We invited Glenn Lungarini, who is the executive director of CIAC-CAS, to address you a couple of weeks ago, and he was so nice to do it then. Then we asked him again last week, and I don't know that he was aware that he was going to get into a storm. And at this point, I'd like to introduce him to tell us what's going on with CIAC, what's going on with fall sports, and hopefully to answer questions from board members. So with that, Glenn, thank you again for coming, and look forward to listening to you.
Hi, Bob, and board members. Thank you again for the opportunity to come speak with you. Certainly, am happy to answer any questions that you have. Again, just to take you through the process, the plan for fall sports was released to superintendents on July 30th, to everybody else on July 31st. Over that 2-week period of time frame from then to now, we made clear that the first objective would be to look at the viability of doing regional play and working with our league commissioners and presidents to try to establish those regions. And then with that success, that we would move forward with individual sport committee meetings, which is the plan that we followed. The regions were submitted to CIAC this past Friday. We had our sport committee meetings Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, with the Board of Control meetings set for Wednesday to review any recommendations or thoughts that came out of those committees at that time. So, the process that we followed is, I think, exactly what we laid out 2 weeks ago. Along that period of time, we continued to collaborate and communicate with, with many people. Bob had referenced, some educational partner calls that he had shared some questions on. I'm on those calls as well at each of those meetings. I provided updates to the educational partners that were on those meetings as well. Again, we continue to emphasize that this is a very fluid process, and ultimately, I think where our board kind of looks at things is we're set to begin August 17th. There's only so long you can wait before you make a definitive judgment and say, this is the plan, because people have to make decisions. I know you're facing those same realities as well. You are going to have that time when the first day of school is upon you, and if there's still decisions that have to be made, they have to be made. And that's where we really felt at this point we were that we had to make a decision, but also remain fluid and understand that new information may be coming in, that things could change. Interestingly enough, as we were going through that 2-week process, we saw things like Rhode Island go on the do not travel list, and then Rhode Island come off the travel list. We saw some numbers in some places elevate, and then then we saw by the middle of this week that the numbers in Connecticut again are back to very low standard. I think we're below 1% again in Connecticut. So those continue to change, and we continue to look at all of the data that stands behind that. So I will say that there's truth that we're waiting for communication from DPH. We have asked several times for an official letter or stance on several items. So yes, we're still we're waiting for that, and when we get that, we will take that to our board. We will review that, and again, we've been clear all along that could change things. If the opinion of the medical professionals should change, if the opinions of DPH change, then certainly that could change things for us. I think from a sports perspective, a concern that exists regardless of what we do is what happens in your school communities if CIAC isn't running sports. We know sports are taking place right now in Connecticut. We know that travel teams, we know that rec teams, that all those things are happening right now. We know that lacrosse is playing. We know field hockey, all those things are playing. When the information got out that we may be looking to move football from the fall to the spring, I received emails from several Pop Warner coaches just wanting to verify that it's okay that 14-year-old freshmen in high school, it wouldn't be a violation of CIAC for them to go play football this fall. So, what one of our concerns is if the recommendation or the thought is that we should move school sports because it's important for schools to have a time period where the sole focus is education, perhaps that should be consistent. Perhaps all sports in the state should stop for a 2-week period. And because as soon as you leave your schools, your cohorts no longer exist, right? As soon as kids get in a community, you can't stop them from getting together in groups. You can't stop them from, going to a social party. We really believe that when you look at athletics and we look at high school kids and the influences and the connections that coaches have with kids, that one of the ways that we can keep the cohorts of our schools together the best is the motivation of those coaches. If a coach says to a team of 20 soccer players, listen, we have an opportunity for the next 8 weeks to be together. And in order for us to accomplish that, for the next 8 weeks, your focuses have to be your family, school, and the team. And you have to sacrifice these social gatherings. You have to sacrifice, these things outside to give us the best opportunity to stay together and play. That is going to be a powerful message that we really feel is going to help maintain the integrity of what you're trying to do during the day beyond the school day hours. If we don't offer that, we know that there will be other sport entities that offer it that don't have regional schedules that we do, that don't have kids in cohorts as 15 as we do, that don't put games off until September 24th as we do. So that's where we are confident that our plan gives schools the best opportunity to maintain those cohorts and all the mitigating strategies that you're taking during the day. Of course, throughout that, there's been mixed feelings on that. We have had some communications from some Board of Education people who feel that that all sports should be canceled. We've had some communication that they should be moved. We've also had some communication that you're doing the right thing and give people a choice. We've had the same thing from superintendents, some who support it, some who don't. Same thing from principals, coaches, parents. It's what we learned from this, and I'm sure what you've learned in your community in trying to develop a best educational plan. There really is no right answer because there's no answer yet to COVID, and it changes on a daily basis. So with that, again, I hope that gives you some background of why we believe in the plan that we have. I could tell you, yes, our plan was vetted through these groups. I did meet with the Rules Committee on July 24th. If you look at the agenda of the Rules Committee, you will see fall sports proposal on the Rules Committee agenda. I did speak with them at that time. I did have very direct questions regarding contact tracing, things like fall football, positions on Pop Warner, youth football, fall football, for DPH shortly after that. And all those conversations took place before our plan was released on July 30th and 31st. We did not receive any negative feedback from those groups after our plan was released in the ensuing 2 weeks. We really received a lot of feedback from our superintendents, our ADs, our administrators, our coaches, our parents, who were able to finally, see the plan in its entirety for the first time once we released it then. And we just couldn't wait any longer. Again, from a planning perspective, listen, if school was going to start for you on Monday and it was Wednesday, wouldn't you feel that you need to make a decision so that your people could at least have 2 days to plan? And that's where we were. Football was set to start on Monday. Here we were on Wednesday, and we just felt we needed to make a decision. But again, wide open. If information changes, we're awaiting an official letter in position from DPH, and we will take that certainly into strong consideration. We'll reconvene, look at it again, and things can change. In the end, boards, superintendents, principals, ADs, we want to do what's best for kids, and that's where our focus is. So, and we think sports and extracurriculars are an important part of that in education. Bob, thank you, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions or anything that the board has.
Okay, well, first let me just say that the Rules Committee is the committee that deals with medical guidelines. Am I correct, for the reopening committees of the state, right, Glenn? Because you mentioned the Rules Committee.
I believe so. I think I think they review more than just the medical as well. But yeah, I think they look at all the, basically review all the plans for the state.
Good. Thank you. So let me get to a couple of questions that are already out. What questions did you ask DPH?
I wonder if I could actually bring it up. I'm just looking at my, at my other screen here. We asked them specific questions about contact tracing. We asked them some specific questions about testing, about football. We did ask them, specifically about high-risk sports versus other sports, as classified by the NFHS and CIAC. And again, we had very good conversations with DPH and the state along the way. So, I don't by any means criticize anybody. I commend the work that DPH has done. So, and understand how busy they are, and appreciate that, their feedback. Listen, sometimes the timelines just don't match up perfectly, but that's why we always remain fluid in these situations. But very specific questions about contact tracing, about at what threshold would a team or a classroom need to isolate. If somebody was experiencing symptoms, how long would they need to be sit out? If somebody tested positive, how long would they need to isolate? Would you need one test to come back? Would you need 2 tests? So, we asked very specific questions to try to get as much detail on that as we could.
So the latest plan, was the latest plan the one that you released July 31st?
Yes.
Yes, and that wasn't, and as you reminded us all at one of our meetings, it is not the final for fall sports. It was, and we all understand it's fluid and things are changing, certainly for boards and superintendents, and the advice being given.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, questions, please. I'm waiting. Please speak up, and let's ask Glenn some questions that you have as board chairs or board members.
Glenn, it's Sheila McKay. I was just curious about contact. I mean, I don't need to hear all the rules for football, but how is contact changing?
You're referring to the actual contact within a sport?
Yeah.
Okay. Recommendation. So, for football, we actually never got to that part of the discussion in football, because with the football committee, the discussion really settled around their recommendation to move the season to the spring to have the best opportunity at a full season. So, that would be a piece that we would need to get back together with the football committee to review what specific guidelines would be there, looking at what things that have come out of NFHS. Some examples from their recommendations is on the sidelines, you limit the players on the sideline to those who would potentially play in the game. So, you don't have 80 kids on a sideline, the freshmen or the sub-varsity players that, wouldn't get in a game that you often would include on the sideline to be part of the team. You would not do that in these scenarios. Recommendations that with the limited numbers on the sideline, you extend the players box to the 10-yard line on each side, so you have more space to spread kids out, that you have markings on the sidelines of where kids would stand, and that they would have to be wearing masks while not engaged on the field and in play and engaged in those high intensity activities. So, those are just some examples in football. Same thing in your other team sports where you have them spread out. You try to limit the number of players that are coming. The players are wearing masks when they're not engaged in the activity. Things like volleyball, no shaking hands, no switching sides. You stay on the same bench. You limit use of locker rooms. You show up in uniform, you leave in uniform, just put a sweatsuit on, over it. Same thing in sports like swimming. Additional things in swimming. Instead of swimming every other lane, one team swims on the 3 lanes, lanes 1, 2, and 3. The other team on lanes 4, 5, and 6. So you don't have too much crossover. You have markings of where people can stand on the deck. You limit kids going into locker rooms for changing to 5 people. You provide a spillover area if necessary, where you can safely space out kids, and also monitor that. And again, wearing masks when you're not actively swimming. And then also the concept of running virtual meets. So on the same day, school A can have kids in their pool, in their own cohorts, get in the pool and swim a race. And at the same time, school B in their pool can swim. And then the coaches post those times of the meets, and and then you compare head to head those times and those races. Things like cross country, again, limiting the number of people that are at the start, limiting the number of people that can come to an event, running kids within cohorts of your own school so you're not crossing over. You can even stagger the times that people run. So you can have, one group run the course, at 8:30, complete their run, have the next school run the course at 9 o'clock. So again, running same course, same day, recording a time with no crossover, but there's a way for kids to compete. So, in each sport, you could see there was a lot of detail that we put into this, and really trying to make it safe. I haven't seen any of that detail in any of the youth or club programs that exist right now.
Bob,
Okay.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Bob,
Yes, Don?
if I could. Yeah,
Sure.
if I could. Glenn, my name is Don Harris. I want to thank you for appearing today, which I know you're in a very difficult position. Just for your information, I'm a former high school basketball coach, a track coach, soccer coach, and I spent 25 years of my career as an athletic director. So I know a little bit about what you're going through. And I was actually received a phone call from a couple members of the football committee asking me what I thought regarding this decision that they were getting ready to make. Do you have any opinion or reason why they have changed their reasoning or their info, and that they were going to recommend to the Board of Control that it be postponed until the spring? While I recognize football is probably the one sport that everybody is very concerned about, But, you know, and I understand all of the safety positions that are being taken, but, you know, I'm sure it makes some people still nervous. And, but what caused the committee to do an about face?
Yeah, you know, Don, and that's part of the work that CIAC does, where there's different levels. You look at the individual sport committee, and then when it comes to the board of control, you're not just looking at the individual sport, you're looking at the potential impact across the board and the rationales behind that.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think the football committee made a bad decision. I think they made a
No.
decision that they felt was in the best interest of the sport.
Yeah.
But I think they were looking at what's the best opportunity of giving kids a full season. And you know, when it comes to the full board level and you're looking at that, you have to consider, so you know, how does moving football for the purpose of giving it a full season relate to keeping other sports that aren't going to have a full season, or how does that impact on sports in the spring
Especially, yeah.
that may not have a full season? And so for us, you know, at the board level, when you think about making that change that's going to have impact for other sports, we come back to what has changed since July 30th in the science and in the health metrics, or in the opinions that we had official statements on, that would agree and put us in a position to move forward. And after we reviewed everything, the answer was nothing at that point had changed.
Yeah.
So if nothing had changed, then you know, we didn't think that approving that suggestion, which would impact multiple sports and multiple kids, was in the best interest of everybody. It may have been, you know, in the best interest of just football, but as you know, you have to look at all kids in the positions that you're in, and so do we.
Thank you, Glenn.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you for your service, man.
Glenn, we've got a couple of questions here. Let me ask the first one. Is there any lists of the communities that already have sports going on now? Because it might help board members when they go to their communities, depending what the end result will be.
I would venture to guess all your communities do. Whether it's you know, it might not be an official rec program, but it might be a club or an AAU program. It's fine. I just I happen to enjoy the sport of tennis, so you know, on my Facebook feeds I get some things on tennis, and I saw something from a youth tennis team that you know, that just finished their club season, and was talking about how, you know, they had people from about 7 different towns that were on this you know, club team. So you know, same thing. We saw you know, lacrosse kids that are playing, baseball teams that have kids from multiple towns that, you know, competed in Pennsylvania a couple weeks ago. So I think within your town and community, I would venture to say you have kids in every town and community playing sports in some capacity right now.
Thanks, Glenn. Another question. What is the relationship with individual boards of education? We have had some of our board members on our board chairs on our listserv talk about they don't think that their community should partake in football or whatever sport it might be.
Mhm.
What do they do in those kind of cases? Who can they talk to? Who makes the final decision for each school board? I guess it's made for the district in each district.
Yeah, you know, I think you're, you know, hopefully if those conversations are about athletics, you know, you would include the athletic director in it. I think including, you know, the high school principal in it is probably a good piece as well. But ultimately, I think it's, you know, it is a decision that the superintendent and the school board is making, and hopefully you do that in collaboration with, you know, the ADs and the principals. And I would encourage you to reach out to, you know, your local departments of health. As you've seen, as this has, you know, developed and gone on, just where in some communities, you know, you might get a recommendation as we're teaching here through the fall that one community shuts down, but another community is safe and stays open, right? So, listen, from a CIAC standpoint, we set what the minimum standard is and what goes out there. We think we're pretty strict in it, but we will not, we will stand right beside any superintendent and any board who makes the individual decision that they don't think it's safe to play a particular sport, or they don't think it's safe to play sports at all. Again, I think our responsibility as a governing body is to look at what's happening now and provide the safest and the best opportunity we can. And I think if you look at our plan and you look at other sports that are taking place now, I'm hopeful that you would come to the conclusion that our plan is more safe and restrictive and aligns with schools. But with that, if your individual board feels, it's not safe to play football, we will stand right next to you and say, we support that decision. They've done their due diligence, just as we've done ours. They're making a decision in the best interest of their community, and that's not wrong. So again, there is no right or wrong here. There's just everybody trying to do the best we can with the metrics we currently have. We're fortunate in Connecticut that we can have this debate. There's a lot of states whose COVID numbers and metrics don't even support, thinking of doing this. So we're fortunate to be in that position, and we will support any superintendent or any board who feels that. And likewise, don't be afraid to send us, communications. Listen, if CABE has a united position on this, please send it to us, and we'll look at. Bob and Patrice will tell you, we work with you guys collaboratively. We speak together often. We're not an adversarial group. We're just trying to do what's best for kids as you guys are. And if the collective position, as we continue to go through this is to pause, then, our board would certainly take that to heart and consider that. I don't know that we would have those, really hard discussions right now if a decision wasn't made, right? So I think, making that final decision makes these hard conversations take place, and that's a good thing because it gives us, even more detailed information to make the right choice.
Thank you, Glenn. That was a great answer, and we hope board chairs who feel, or board members who feel that their district should not take part in sports at this point, discuss it among themselves and then talk to the CIAC. Glenn, was there any discussion about having non-contact sports go ahead and yet contact sports sort of wait? Did you have any discussions on that?
Extensive. And again, when we first talked about this, I mentioned the rules committee before, and when we first talked about this, and thinking, should we play now? Should we put off? One of the positions at the time was the metrics in Connecticut are never going to be better than they are right now. And if you want to play now, because sports are being played now. Every sport is being played now. Football, 7-on-7 passing leagues were played. The last one that was supposed to take place was August 7th and 8th, got up in New Canaan and got canceled because of the power outages. But, again, even football was being played in Connecticut. So, yes, we had extensive, conversations on that. And the bottom line is the metrics in Connecticut support it. And I think when Dr. Fauci was on the governor's press conference, that was his position. You're fortunate in Connecticut that you're in a position you can play sports if you can adhere to mitigating factors like regional play, following CDC guidelines. And that's what our plan does. And, so yes, absolutely. We've had those discussions extensively along the way. And we'll continue. The discussions aren't over. It's when we approved it yesterday, one of the TV reporters asked me, so this is the plan for fall sports now, right? And I said, well, this is the plan at 3:00, and I'll let you know what the plan is at 5 when we get there. So it's and that's again that's reality that you're dealing with and we're dealing with. As things change, we have to adapt and act in the best interest. But I think, Bob, as well, we can't lose sight of the fact that as people involved in giving kids good experiences, for so long we've talked about the social emotional needs of kids. We've talked about the mental health of kids. And if we just think about going back to school and giving kids core curriculum, and we ignore that at a time when they need it as much as ever, not only because of the what's going on in terms of COVID and how that has isolated people, but just other things in society that we're dealing with right now. Our kids need that, and they find that often through the extracurriculars, and that's a challenge. I know. Listen, my daughter's not an athlete; she's a band person. So her marching band is set to have practices next week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. On their high school campus. So again, we just think we need to be consistent. If we're saying, hey, you shouldn't be playing high school sports, well, okay, but band can go, and and other things can go. Again, we're just looking for some consistency across the board and do what's best for kids. Bob, I can't hear you. There you go.
I'm sorry. Any other questions? I know there are some in the boxes, but I want to give Glenn a chance to go back to do what he has to do today, which is not easy, but we'll take one more question.
Take as many as you want. I have an interview scheduled at 12:15, so I'm happy to. Again, I'm throughout this process. I think the one thing that nobody can come back and say is that CIAC has not been available or transparent through this, and we have been open. Our process has been open. We have had weekly meetings with athletic directors. We just had another one this morning at 9 o'clock. We have been fully available and accessible. So that's where we are. And while you're taking that, I will just say I did hear some kind of chatter as we were coming on about a headline in the Hartford Courant. And listen, again, from a CIAC standpoint, we value any opinion and official statement that we can get from the governor's office and from the Department of Health. Timing wise, it would be great if we had that, whatever their opinion was before our meeting ended and or our meeting started. I don't think there was any secret in Connecticut that our board was meeting at 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. So, but we certainly respect their opinion. I am not going to criticize the governor's office. I am not going to criticize DPH. Quite the contrary, I'm going to commend the work that DPH has done. So when we have that official statement for them, we greatly appreciate it. We will take it. We will review it, give it all its due diligence, and and act accordingly with it.
Great. Last question, anyone?
Yeah, this is Leonard from Windsor.
Hi, Leonard.
Glenn, thanks for getting on. I'm concerned on two levels. One, with any type of policy procedures, there's always going to be a level of social disobedience. I think everyone is trying to enjoy their summer as much as possible, considering that we were bunched in. People are traveling all over the place. And there's going to come a time, late August, everybody's going to come back to Connecticut and try to get back to a normal life. Considering that the Big Ten and Pac-12 have canceled not just football, but all of their fall sports. And I consider those two conferences power conferences that have very deep coffers. And they're erring to the side of safety. Did the CIC take any consideration to what the collegiate conferences are doing and take any best case or worst case practices that they're doing into their decision making?
Absolutely, and thank you for the question. And certainly it was a position that we looked at. Two of the medical doctors that we talked to are actually doctors at Yale University and work with the Yale sport teams as well. The big difference there is with all of your college teams, you're bringing kids from all over the country on campus just to put your team together. When you go to play your games, you're getting on planes and you're traveling to other states to play. There's travel restrictions. There's places that that the COVID metrics don't line up as they do in Connecticut. And at the high school level, it's a very different experience, right? You're not drawing kids from all over the country. You're drawing kids from your school district or your school region. You're not playing teams from all over, the country and various states. In fact, the CIAC said that there would be no out-of-state play this year for CIAC sports. So all play was restricted to Connecticut, and then further, all play has been restricted to a geographic region that has been set up to keep your schools as close as possible to each other. None of that is possible at the collegiate level. And you can't really do that. The only way at the collegiate level that you can potentially play, and have mitigating factors to the extent that we do in high school is to do what professional sports are doing and create, a bubble scenario like the NBA has or the NHL has. Even baseball hasn't created that bubble scenario. So that's where I think high school sports are different. That has been the discussion with the experts on it, and again, not only with our doctors, but with others as well. And I think that's why you see, again, youth sports taking place while, other professional sports and college sports aren't, because it's just a difference.
I appreciate that response, and I do agree with you about the interstate aspect as far as the conference play. But I think you've helped make my point to the fact that there's families that are traveling cross state lines across this country and possibly some internationally. And there's pockets of resistance to mask and social distancing that's being exhibited across this country. And the potential of that being brought back to Connecticut with any type of carriers, the danger, in my opinion, is quite real. And we're doing the best here in Connecticut. But when those are coming back into Connecticut, if they're not being checked, they're driving instead of being checked by plane or train, we don't know what's coming into the state and what's going to be introduced into our ecosystem. So I'm ultra concerned, but I do think the due diligence that the CIAC has taken on this matter.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And I agree with you, and I think that concern exists in your classroom as much as it does on the field. And that's the tough part. It's, listen, you're safe if you don't have anybody that's COVID positive around you, right? If you have, a group of 3 people and one of those people is COVID positive, then all 3 of those people are at risk. If you have a group of 50 and nobody in that group is COVID positive, nobody's at risk. And, the fact is we just don't know. So you look at the metrics that exist in your state and go by, what is the risk at this time? And that's what we've relied on largely in Connecticut for a lot of our reopening and activities that we've taken place. So your point is well taken, and I agree, and I think that exists, throughout the decisions we're making in education.
And I thank you, and I offer that perspective as an individual that unfortunately lost 8 family members between April and May to COVID, and doing the right thing, and stuff was brought to them, and so it's frustrating. And what I don't want to do as a board chair or any board chair is to have to go to the family of a student or staff member and be blamed possibly for allowing the opportunity for someone to be infected. So I'm just ultra conservative on this particular topic.
Yeah. I'm very sorry for your loss and appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Okay, Glenn, I'm going to let you go now. You can get ready for the next interview. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, being so willing to talk about the decisions and how they were made. I also think we really benefited from the fact that you talked about how individual districts who are concerned can raise those concerns. Thank you for being a good friend of ours, and good luck in the next few weeks.
I really appreciate that, and again, we are wide open to, to any input and feedback that you could give. Again, you have my commitment and CIAC and CAS's commitment. We will never criticize a board, and we appreciate our partnership, and we hope we can work side by side with that. I don't think as you work through COVID, anybody could really criticize anybody for, the due diligence that you're doing. We could have differences of opinion, but let's take those differences, sit down respectfully and learn from it, because then opinions might change, one way or another. And that's what we'll keep doing. So we respect all the work you're doing. And if there's anything CIAC or CAS can do to stand by your side as you're making these decisions and support you, we would be happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Glenn.
Thanks, Glenn.
We don't have a lot of time left, but we can certainly go a little bit over our usual noon hour if we have to. Patrice, I want to turn it over to you to do some sharing. It's great that Glenn stayed on so long, but we realize there are other issues that our members are thinking about.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, that was a great conversation, and hopefully it gave the board members on the call some sense of the process that CIAC has used. Obviously, just like determining what the reopen plan for your school district will be, there are no easy answers here. And as we've said from the very beginning, flexibility and communication, to quote our president, Don Harris, are key. So let's talk about things that are on your mind in addition to athletics this week. We open it up to you to share, to ask questions, and to communicate with each other.
I think one of the questions, Patrice, that I saw on the listserv this morning had to do with bringing your boards back for in-person meetings. How to what's the best vehicle to do that? Some said Zoom, some said other things. That might be a topic that we can discuss for a few minutes.
Sure, and I can begin with that. I'm actually going to be with the Branford Board of Education tonight in person. They're holding their annual retreat, and they will make the meeting accessible. I believe 2 of their board members will be participating virtually, and it will also be accessible to the public that way. I know one of the concerns boards are working through the logistics of is their desire to return, if possible, to in-person meetings, but a concern that if there are significant numbers of public members that want to come, they might not have the capacity to respect the physical distancing requirements. So the model of the board members in person, to the extent they are able to do that in person, but continuing whatever platform you've been using. And I know a number of you have said you've gotten more public engagement at your board meetings in this virtual environment than you ever have had before. That is perfectly permissible. The flexibility that you have around meetings is tied to the governor's emergency powers, which do expire on September 9th. So at that point, all of the normal Freedom of Information Act requirements would remain in place, but unless there is an additional emergency order. Comments about how you are, let's hear from somebody that's actually had an in-person Board of Ed meeting. I don't know if Tara's still on the phone. I know Darien met several weeks ago for their retreat in person.
Hi, Patrice. I am on the line. We did have a successful retreat in person. We continued in-person meetings. I'll tell you, there have been some difficulties, including ideas of social distancing. If you're distanced, do you need to wear a mask? Do you not need to wear a mask? Do you need to wear a mask just to model good behavior for teachers and students, given the orders around schools? So it's been a little difficult. We were precluded from meeting in person last time due to the storm and the primary. And we had a bit of a problem on Zoom. We had over 300 people tuning into the meeting, and we had a Zoom limit. So our best solution, I think, has been as a board to meet in person. We have 1 or 2 members who are uncomfortable with that. They have been able to Zoom in, and then to allow both a live streaming and a Zoom link for public comment. But I will say it's complicated. But I do find meeting in person has been far more productive for board work. Not that Zoom was an awful option, but I will say I do think boards will face these questions around masks, appropriate social distancing, who has cohorted or not. The superintendent and I have been together since March 12th. We did not know that people would feel strongly if we had masks in or not. It really came down to more like, are we modeling appropriate behavior or not? So there's just a lot of questions that pop up, but I have found that a return to in-person meetings for board members overall has been more productive to conversations.
Thanks for sharing, Tara. Someone else?
Patrice, this is Eileen Baker on another topic. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Let's stick with the issue. Let's stick with the question of in-person board meetings for a minute or two. Okay.
No worries. Sure.
Yeah, Patrice, this is Andy George in Stanford. Yeah, it is sort of two-sided. There are members who want to get back together. Right now, our government center is closed to the public except for appointment, and the mayor has not allowed any boards really to meet in person. But what I do find is we use GoToMeeting for the large public meetings, and that has worked out very well in terms of public participation. So for the first time, you actually get over 900 people watching. I know there's a live stream, but the live stream that we have a system that's called Granicus that gives sort of I would call somewhat substandard camera action. And so I've kind of enjoyed, and I think people have actually been, especially with the information that needs to get out, I think go to webinar in this case, it has worked out very fine for us.
Great. One more person want to share their experience on in-person?
Well, we haven't had our in-person yet in Windsor. We're planning it for Wednesday, but it's odd that we have people that want the schools to be fully open and have the children in the buildings, but want to have the meeting by Zoom meeting, which is totally hypocritical. So that's the fight that I'm having right now. So it's mind-numbing, but you have people that I want to make sure I'm safe, but open up the schools. It's disappointing. Just want
they want what they want when they want it.
Yeah, I would say in Darien, we're having the same conversations. I have certain members who say they're uncomfortable with in-person meetings, but are pushing for full reopenings. And it would seem as if there's a conflict within those two arguments.
Yep.
Patrice, in Bristol, we've had several of these remote and live meetings, and I think the consensus is it's very unsatisfactory. Those that are in the room can hear, but those that are on the Zoom call cannot. And we just not have found a technological solution that works well enough that engages both parties together. I know I did watch some of the listserv ideas about maybe meeting in a bigger hall and trying to have everybody Zoom so that we were all on the same platform, but either the speakers in the room don't speak close enough to the mic, so those of you that are remotely connecting in can't hear, and there's a lot of feedback or there's a break in the connection on occasion. I also participated in a zoning meeting last night in the same fashion, and they had the same kind of barriers and problems. So I'm guessing that we just haven't found the right technological solution yet. And so it would be interesting to see what technology is being used out there to bridge remote what I call remote attendance with in-person attendance, because we need to have better cameras. We need to have better, I don't know what the word is that you use, but somehow the connection between those at home or meeting outside in remote fashion and those in the seats needs to be better, especially if they allowed public comment last night at our meeting. There was a Black Lives March to the Board of Ed, and then the Board of Ed, the Black Lives members were allowed 5 people in the room at a time to public comment, but those of us that were meeting at home could not hear their comment. So I hope someone has a best practice as to what technology they're using to bridge those two platforms.
So maybe Bob will post that question on the board chair listserv and get some feedback, Chris, okay?
Yep.
All right, I will go back to Eileen if you want to make a comment or ask a question.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I will say, just from the Ossabac Board of Education, where we have not met yet in person, I think we're still continuing to do it remotely for the various concerns that were mentioned this morning. Yes, I have just a question. So I actually, besides being a Board of Education member, I'm also an educator in a public school system here in Connecticut. And I was curious to know from the Board of Education members that are on this call, if they have learned through their superintendent some of the thoughts and concerns for safe reentry for teachers, if teachers have had opportunity for some discourse on some of their concerns. You see a lot of them online, but I'm just curious if there is some consensus as a whole for the state.
Board members want to
ventilation,
respond?
could be lots of things, yeah.
I know.
I'm Leslie from.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Thank you. Leslie from Watertown. We have had concerns brought to us from the teachers related to the mask concerns in the classroom, where we've made some modifications to our plan in regards to how many breaks the students have as a result of some of the teachers' concerns about the number of breaks and where they're going to take place. Promoting them to be outside was the teachers' positions on that. They also had concerns in regards to the equity of 8th through 12th graders in Watertown having hybrid learning, while K through 7 have in-person learning. They also had concerns with the exemptions and the doctor note exemptions. And we are looking at some of those being treated as 504s to see if some of those students can have accommodations where they get extra mask breaks where possible, as opposed to not wearing their mask at all. They've had concerns about their own health and safety, being around kids who don't have to wear them, and a few other minor ones that we're easily, be able to work through. The one that remains the most pressing is the equity piece.
Other comments?
Board members feel like the ventilation systems are safe for teachers to be in their classrooms for extended periods of time? Thanks so much for your feedback.
I think on the issue of the ventilation systems, I think if those of you who have not watched the webinar that the State Department of Education did, I think that will answer a lot of questions from people that have far more expertise about ventilation than any members of the CABE staff.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's really just a safety question, and I appreciate it.
Yes, Patrice, this is Bob.
Go ahead, Bob.
I can't remember, I'm in too many meetings, so I can't remember exactly where I heard this one. But, teachers wanting to teach remotely to the kids that are in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how people are handling that.
I know some districts have looked at providing in order to make that accommodation using a paraprofessional or a long-term sub to do the classroom management piece while the certified educator teaches remotely. The challenge there is, depending upon how many individuals you have who ask for that accommodation, it just might not be logistically possible. Has anyone on the call dealt with that issue?
Okay, thanks.
All right, with that, and with respect to the time, we have gone a little over since you had your full dose of athletics today. With this, we will certainly see you again next Thursday at 11 a.m. And we hope that you stay safe and well. Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.